Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at how resilience, hope, and faith kind of all work together, especially when we're talking about things like mental health. The two sources that we're looking at today offer some really cool perspectives, from like practical strategies to some deeper questions. Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things about these sources is how they challenge the idea that resilience and hope and faith are just like these fixed traits. Like you either have them or you don't. They're saying it's more like an active thing you can practice and make stronger. Oh, that's such a good point. It makes it feel a lot more attainable, right? Like instead of thinking, oh, I'm just not a resilient person, it's like, okay, maybe there are things I can do to improve. Exactly. And one of the things they say is that you can do that by seeing how these things all connect. Right. So for example, one of the sources mentions the story of Job from the Bible. He goes through all this awful stuff, but he keeps his faith. So how does that tie into resilience? Is it just about having something to believe in when things are hard? Well, it's a little more complicated than that. For Job, his faith isn't about getting rid of his problems. It's about giving him the strength to get through them. It's like the base of his resilience. Yeah. The thing that keeps him standing even when everything else is falling apart. Wow, that's a really powerful image. So it's like faith becomes this anchor that stops you from being completely overwhelmed by all the bad stuff. And that anchor of faith can give you hope too. It lets Job believe that even when things are really, really bad, things can get better. So it's not just like blind optimism, it's like hope, but it's based on something bigger, Something that goes beyond what's happening right now. Right. And this idea that faith, resilience, and hope are all connected is a big part of both sources, even though they look at it in different ways. One source focuses more on practical ways to get hope, and the other one goes deeper into the ideas behind resilience. So it sounds like a good mix of practical stuff and bigger ideas. So let's talk about some of those practical strategies. What are some things people can actually do to feel more hopeful, especially if they're dealing with mental health issues? Both sources talk about how important it is to have a vision for the future. And it doesn't have to be some big, complicated plan. It could be as simple as thinking about what you'd like to see change in a week or a month or a year. So it's like having something to look forward to, a goal to work towards, even if it's small. Exactly. It's about feeling like things can get better and that you're moving in the right direction. One of the sources compares it to planting a seed. You don't see the plant right away, but you take care of it, and you have faith that it'll grow eventually. I like that. It shows how important it is to be patient and to take action and to believe in the process, even if you don't see results right away. Yeah, and those little steps you take to take care of that seed, those become your sources of hope. Maybe it's calling a friend or trying a new hobby, Or even just getting out of bed and going for a walk when you're feeling down. Every little thing you do becomes a victory, a reason to feel hopeful. So it's about changing your focus from thinking about what's wrong to thinking about what you can do to make things better, even in small ways. Exactly. And that leads into another strategy that the sources talk about, surrounding yourself with positive things. This can be anything that makes you feel good, like being around inspiring people, reading good books, listening to uplifting music. So you're being careful about what you let into your mind. Instead of being bombarded with negativity, you're choosing to fill it with good things. Right. It's like you're creating a garden in your mind and choosing to plant flowers instead of weeds. Okay, so we've talked about having a vision, taking action, and being around positive things. But what about other ways to build resilience and hope? Especially when you're facing different challenges in life. Because what works for a 5-year-old probably won't work for someone who's 80, right? Yeah, that's a really good point. And one of the things I really liked about these sources is that they actually give specific advice for different ages and situations. Oh, that's really helpful. So let's start with a 5-year-old. Let's say this kid is growing up in a poor neighborhood and going through some tough stuff. How do you explain resilience, hope, and faith to a kid like that? One source says you can use analogies that kids can understand, like comparing resilience to a tree bending in the wind. The tree might move around a lot, but its roots keep it in the ground. So it's about showing them that even when things are hard, they have the strength inside that helps them stay strong. Right. And for a 5-year-old, hope might just be about noticing the little happy things in their day. It could be a pretty flower or a friendly dog, or someone being nice to them. So it's about helping them see that even when things are tough, there are still good things to be happy about. Exactly. And you can also encourage them to set little goals like what they want to be when they grow up and then take little steps to get there. Maybe it's drawing a picture of their dream house or learning a new skill or just being kind to others. All those little things help them build hope. And what about faith? How do you explain that to a kid who might not really understand religion or spirituality? For a kid, faith might just be about feeling safe and loved by their family and community. It's about knowing that even when things are hard, they have people who care about them and will help them. It's about knowing they belong and that they're not alone. Yeah, and for a child who's going through hard times, that feeling of connection and support can be really powerful. It can help them be resilient, give them hope, and make them strong enough to face whatever comes their way. That makes sense. So we talked about how resilience, hope, and faith might work for a 5-year-old. Now let's think about someone who's 80. What are some things that might resonate with them? Well, for someone who's lived a long life, it's important to remember how resilient they already are. They've been through a lot of hard things, and they've come out stronger on the other side. It's about helping them see that their life experiences have made them strong, and that they've already proven they can bounce back from tough stuff. Exactly. And recognizing that can be really empowering, especially when you're dealing with the challenges of getting older. It's like saying, hey, you've already got this amazing resilience inside you. Remember those times you thought you couldn't go on, but you did? You can use that strength again. So instead of thinking about getting older as a decline, it's about seeing the strength and wisdom that comes with a long life. Right. And for someone who's 80, cultivating hope might be different than for a 5-year-old. It might be about finding joy in simple things, connecting with loved ones, doing hobbies, or just appreciating the beauty in everyday moments. So it's about shifting your focus from what you might be losing to what you still have to be grateful for, to what still makes you happy and gives you purpose. Yeah, and faith can also look different at this stage of life. It might be about finding peace and acceptance with how things are changing, finding comfort in your spiritual beliefs, or just looking back on your life and finding meaning in your experiences. So it's about realizing that faith can grow and change over time and still give you a sense of stability and purpose, even as your life changes. And both sources say that for older adults, staying connected with other people and being part of a community is really important for resilience and hope. Because it's easy to feel isolated as you get older, right? It is. But by staying connected with family and friends and being part of groups, older adults can have that support and purpose they need, which can make them more resilient and happier overall. Okay. So we've talked about how these ideas might work for a 5-year-old and an 80-year-old. Now I want to talk about how resilience, hope, and faith work for someone facing a different kind of challenge, like someone starting a new business and dealing with all the struggles that come with that. That's a good question. And what's interesting is that both sources actually talk about this. They say that these ideas are especially important for entrepreneurs. For someone starting a business, resilience is about seeing setbacks as chances to learn and grow. So instead of getting discouraged by those early challenges, it's about asking yourself, okay, what can I learn from this? How can I adapt and make things better? Yeah, it's about having that entrepreneurial spirit, that willingness to keep going even when things are uncertain, to experiment, to fail, and to get back up stronger and wiser every time. But what if someone doesn't naturally feel that grit? How can they develop it? That's where the sources offer some interesting ideas. One of them says that you can develop grit through a combination of passion, perseverance, and purpose. When you're really passionate about what you're doing and you have a clear vision for why you're doing it, you're more likely to keep going even when things get tough. So it's about connecting to that deeper motivation, the thing that drives you even when things are hard. Right. And that sense of purpose can also give you hope. When you believe in what you're creating, you're more likely to stay hopeful even when you face challenges. It's like that voice inside you saying, this might be tough now, but I'm on the right track and I'ma keep going. And that kind of belief in yourself can be contagious, right? It can inspire others to believe in you. Yourself can be contagious, right? It can inspire others to believe in you and your vision too. It can. And just like we talked about before, connection is really important here too. For someone starting a business, having a network of mentors, other entrepreneurs, or even just supportive friends and family can make all the difference. Because starting a business can be lonely, right? Having those people to brainstorm with, to vent to, and to celebrate with can be really helpful. Definitely. They can give you encouragement, offer new perspectives, and remind you that you're not alone in this. One source specifically mentions the power of joining entrepreneur groups, or finding a mentor who's already been through the challenges you're facing. Their experience and support can be so valuable. So it's about realizing that you don't have to figure everything out on your own. There are people who've been there before, and their advice and support can help you stay resilient and hopeful. Exactly. And let's not forget about the power of routine. Creating structure and consistency in your workday can help you feel more in control and give you a sense of purpose even when things are chaotic, which happens a lot when you're starting a business. So even if you're not making a lot of sales yet, sticking to a schedule, doing your work, and making progress can really boost your resilience and hope. It can. It's about focusing on what you can control, celebrating small wins, and reminding yourself that success is a journey, not a destination. And that journey can be really enjoyable and fulfilling. Okay, so we've talked about resilience, hope, and faith in terms of childhood, older adulthood, and starting a business. Now I want to shift gears and talk about someone facing a very different kind of hardship, someone living in poverty in a developing country. How do these ideas apply in that situation? That's a really important question, and both sources address this thoughtfully and carefully. They start by acknowledging how hard it is to live in poverty, and they validate those struggles as very real and incredibly challenging. That validation is crucial, isn't it? It's like saying, we see you, we hear you, and your struggles are real. Yes, it is. Oh, and then the sources emphasize that resilience is something that all humans have. It's not just for people in certain situations or with certain resources. Yeah, it's that inner strength that lets us face hardship and keep going even when things feel impossible. And for someone living in poverty, that resilience might be about finding creative ways to provide for their family, or looking for opportunities to improve their situation, finding moments of joy even when things are scarce, or just holding on to hope for a better future. It's about recognizing that resilience can be found in the everyday acts of survival, in the determination to make life a little bit better for themselves and their loved ones, even when things are really tough. It's that unwavering spirit that refuses to be defeated even when the odds are stacked against you. Right. And when we talk about hope in this context, it might not be about big dreams. It might be about those small glimmers of possibility, like the hope of a good harvest, the hope of a child getting an education, the hope of a new opportunity, or even just the hope of making it through another day. It's about finding those things to hold on to in the midst of difficult circumstances, those things that keep you moving forward even when the path is hard. And that's where faith in its broadest sense can be really powerful. Whether it's through religious belief, a sense of community, or just a belief in your own inner strength, faith can provide comfort, resilience, and hope when you're facing poverty. It can be that reminder that you're not alone, that there's something you can draw strength from even when you have a lot of external resources. And the sources really emphasize how important community is in this context. Sharing resources, supporting each other, and working together to overcome challenges can be a lifeline for people facing poverty. It's about recognizing that collective strength, that sense of shared purpose and resilience that comes when people come together to support each other. It's like the saying, it takes a village. Exactly. And even in the toughest situations, the sources remind us that there are always small things we can do to cultivate resilience, hope, and faith. Whether it's finding a moment of peace in nature, connecting with a loved one, practicing gratitude, or just being kind to others, those actions, no matter how small, can have a ripple effect. They can remind us of our own strength, renew our sense of hope, and help us tap into that resilience we all have inside. And those small acts of resilience, hope, and faith can together create a more just and compassionate world, a world where everyone has the chance to thrive. Wow, we've covered a lot today. We've talked about how resilience, hope, and faith can be developed and used in so many different life experiences, from childhood to old age, from the struggles of starting a business to the challenges of poverty. What stands out to you from all of this? What strikes me is how universal these concepts are. They're not limited by age, situation, or background. They're things we can all tap into no matter what challenges we're facing. I agree. And what's exciting is that the sources give us a lot of practical tools for nurturing these qualities. It's not just about hoping for the best. It's about taking action, making choices, and building those inner resources that help us get through anything. And one of the really cool things the sources talk about is how faith can actually make you more resilient, even if you're not religious in the traditional sense. So that's interesting. What are some examples of, non-religious faith that can help with resilience? Well, one example is having faith in humanity. Even when you see a lot of bad stuff happening in the world, you still choose to believe that people are basically good, that they're capable of kindness and compassion. That belief can really help you stay strong. Yeah, I can see that would work. Instead of getting cynical, you're focusing on the good in people. Exactly. Another type of faith that can make you more resilient is faith in yourself. This is about believing in your own abilities, your inner strength, and your ability to overcome challenges. It's like that voice inside you that says, I can do this even if it's hard. It's like trusting your gut and knowing you can handle tough situations even if you're not exactly sure how. Right. And the sources say that you can actually build this kind of self-faith over time. Every time you face a challenge and overcome it, you're adding to that foundation of belief in yourself. You're proving to yourself that you can handle whatever life throws at you. So it's like working out a muscle, but for your mind, strengthening that ability to believe in yourself even when things are tough. Yeah, exactly. And both sources say that this isn't about being arrogant or thinking you're better than everyone else. It's about knowing your strengths and weaknesses, and also knowing that you can always learn and grow from your experiences. So it's not about pretending you're perfect. It's about recognizing that you have strength that can help you through tough times. Right. And the sources suggest some things you can do to develop this self-faith. One is to focus on your past successes, even the small ones. Take some time to think about times when you overcame obstacles, achieved goals, or just got through a tough situation. Those experiences show you how resilient you are. That's a good reminder. Sometimes we get so caught up in our current problems that we forget about all the times we've been strong and successful in the past. I know, right? Another thing you can do is surround yourself with people who believe in you, people who encourage you and remind you of your strengths, especially when you're doubting yourself. Like having your own personal cheerleading squad, people who lift you up and remind you how awesome you are. Yeah, exactly. And speaking of practical things we can do, let's go back to those specific tips for building hope that we talked about earlier. Like having a vision for the future, taking action, and being around positive things. What other suggestions do the sources have? Well, one that really stuck with me was the idea of focusing on what you can control, especially when you're dealing with things that feel really overwhelming. That's a powerful one. And both sources talk about that a lot, especially when it comes to mental health. When you're dealing with anxiety or depression, it's easy to feel like you have no control over your emotions. Yeah. Like you're just being tossed around by your feelings? Yeah, it's like being stuck on a roller coaster you can't get off of, just going up and down with your thoughts and feelings. Exactly. But the sources remind us that even in those situations, there are things we can control. Maybe it's our breathing or the way we talk to ourselves or the activities we choose to do or the people we spend time with. So it's about finding those little areas where you can take charge even if you can't control everything. Right. And those little acts of control can actually help you feel more hopeful. Every time you choose to do something positive for yourself, every time you use a healthy coping mechanism, you're reminding yourself that you're not powerless. It's like taking back some control, even if it's just a little bit. Yeah, and the sources give some concrete examples of how to do this. One of them talks about mindfulness. Just taking a few minutes every day to focus on your breath and be present in the moment can really calm your anxiety and help you feel more grounded. It's like hitting the pause button on all the chaos and giving yourself a moment to reconnect with yourself and regain some control. Exactly. Another thing they suggest is journaling. Writing down your thoughts and feelings can be a way to process them, make sense of them, and gain some perspective. It's like giving all those thoughts a place to go. Instead of swirling around in your head, they're on paper where you can look at them more objectively. Yeah. And when you do that, you might start to see patterns. Notice what triggers those thoughts or just realize that they're not as big and scary as they feel in your head. So it's a way to understand your thoughts better and feel more in control of them. Exactly. The sources also talk about self-compassion, especially when you're dealing with mental health challenges. Because it's easy to be hard on yourself when you're struggling, right? Like you're failing or not doing enough. It is. But the sources say that we all deserve kindness and compassion, especially from ourselves. They suggest treating yourself with the same understanding and care you would give a friend who's going through a hard time. So instead of beating yourself up for feeling anxious or depressed, you acknowledge those feelings, give yourself some support, and remind yourself that you're not alone. Right. And that self-compassion can actually make you more resilient. It lets you acknowledge your struggles without judgment. Give yourself permission to feel your emotions and focus on taking care of yourself. It's like creating a safe space inside yourself where you can be vulnerable and give yourself the support you need to heal and grow. Exactly. And the sources have some ideas for how to develop self-compassion. One is to practice positive self-talk. Instead of criticizing yourself, try to focus on your good qualities, your accomplishments, and the things you're grateful for, like being your own best friend, giving yourself encouragement and support instead of judgment and criticism. Yeah. Another suggestion is to do things that make you happy and nourish your soul, like spending time in nature, listening to music, reading a good book, or connecting with loved ones. It's about remembering that taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's essential for staying healthy, especially when you're facing challenges. It is. And the sources also say that it's important to ask for professional help when you need it. If you're really struggling with mental health, reaching out to a therapist, counselor, or psychiatrist can give you the support and guidance you need to get through it. It's about recognizing that you don't have to deal with everything on your own. There are professionals who can help you develop coping skills, understand what's going on, and find a path to healing. Right. And the sources also talk about how faith can help you be more resilient, even if you're not religious in the traditional sense. We talked about that earlier, right? Yeah. The idea of having faith in yourself and humanity, or even just in a greater good. How does that work when it comes to mental health challenges? Well, one way is that faith can give you a sense of perspective. When you're struggling with anxiety or depression, it can feel like those feelings will never end, like you're trapped in a cycle of negativity. It's like being in a dark tunnel with no end in sight. Exactly. But faith, whether it's in yourself, a higher power, or just the goodness in the world, can offer a little bit of hope. It's a reminder that things will eventually get better. It's like holding on to the belief that even though things are hard right now, there's a light at the end of the tunnel even if you can't see it yet. Right. And that belief that faith can give you a lot of strength can help you keep going, to keep looking for that light even when the darkness feels overwhelming. So it's not about pretending the struggle isn't real. It's about having faith that there's something beyond it. Something worth fighting for. Exactly. And the sources give some concrete ways to build that faith. One is to connect with something bigger than yourself, whether it's nature, art, music, helping others, or a spiritual practice. It's about finding things that inspire you, give you a sense of wonder, and make you feel connected to something bigger than your own problems. Right. Another thing they suggest is practicing gratitude. Taking time each day to appreciate the good things in your life, no matter how small, can help you focus less on the negative and develop a more hopeful and resilient outlook. It's like training your mind to see the positive, to appreciate the good things even when there are bad things happening. Exactly. And the sources point out that gratitude isn't about ignoring the challenges or pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing to see and appreciate the good things alongside the bad things, to find those little bits of light even in the darkest moments. So it's about developing a more balanced view, recognizing that life is a mix of good and bad, and choosing to focus on the things that give your life meaning and purpose. Right. And both sources say that this practice of gratitude can have a big impact on your mental health. It can make you more resilient, more hopeful, and give you a stronger sense of connection to yourself and the world around you. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of different ways to build resilience, hope, and faith. Yeah, from having a vision for the future to practicing self-compassion, to finding things that connect us to something bigger than ourselves. But what about those times when we just feel stuck? when we can't seem to access those inner resources. What do the sources say about those times? That's a great question. And one thing I really appreciate about these sources is that they acknowledge that there will be times when we just don't feel resilient, hopeful, or faithful. They don't try to pretend that life is always easy. They acknowledge that there will be moments when we feel overwhelmed, discouraged, and even hopeless. So it's not about pretending those feelings don't exist. It's about finding ways to deal with them when they come up. Exactly. And one of the main messages in both sources is that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to yes, it is. And the sources suggest some ways to do this in a healthy way. One is to simply acknowledge those feelings, to name them and let yourself experience them without judgment. Like saying to yourself, okay, I'm feeling really anxious right now. That's okay. I'm not going to try to fight it or pretend it's not there. Right. Another suggestion is to find healthy ways to express those emotions. Maybe it's talking to someone you trust, journaling, doing something creative, or spending time in nature. So it's about finding things that help you process your emotions in a way that feels safe and supportive. Exactly. And the sources also talk about how important self-care is during those difficult times. This means taking care of your physical and mental health, getting enough sleep, eating healthy foods, doing things you enjoy, and setting boundaries to protect your energy. So it's about recognizing that when you're feeling drained, it's even more important to take care of yourself, to give your body and mind what they need, so you have the strength to get through those challenges. Yes, and both sources remind us that asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. If you're feeling overwhelmed, don't be afraid to reach out to loved ones, a therapist, or a support group. Sometimes, just talking about your struggles with someone who cares can make a big difference. It's about remembering that we don't have to go through tough times alone. There are people who want to help and who can offer support and guidance. And the sources also emphasize the importance of patience and self-compassion. Building resilience, hope, and faith is a journey, not a destination. There will be setbacks, and there will be times when you feel like you're moving backwards instead of forwards. So it's okay to have those moments of struggle, to not always feel strong or hopeful. It is. And the sources remind us that those moments of struggle are often where we grow the most. It's in those times when we're forced to dig deep, to use our inner resources, and to rely on our support systems that we build true resilience. So it's about seeing those challenges, those dark moments, not as failures, but as opportunities to learn, grow, and change. Exactly. And the sources give some practical tips for getting through those tough times. One is to focus on the present moment. When you're feeling overwhelmed by worries about the future or regrets about the past, try to bring your attention back to right now. What can you see, hear, smell, taste, and touch in this moment? It's about grounding yourself in the here and now instead of getting lost in what ifs and if onlys. Right. Another suggestion is to find something, even just one small thing, to be grateful for. Maybe it's the warmth of the sun on your skin, the sound of laughter, or the taste of your favorite food. It's about reminding yourself that even in the middle of difficulty, there are still good things to appreciate. Yes, and the sources also talk about the power of reframing our experiences. Instead of seeing challenges as setbacks, try to see them as chances to grow and learn. It's about looking at things from a different angle, finding the good and the bad, and recognizing that even those tough experiences can make us stronger and wiser in the end. Exactly. And both sources emphasize that resilience isn't about never experiencing hardship or pain. It's about learning to deal with those challenges gracefully, to bounce back from tough times, and to keep moving forward even when things are hard. So it's about developing that inner strength, that flexibility, that ability to adapt and overcome no matter what happens. Right. And the sources use a beautiful image to illustrate this. They talk about a bamboo tree. Unlike other trees that might break in a strong wind, bamboo bends with the wind. Its flexibility allows it to survive even the worst storms. That's such a powerful image. It reminds us that true strength is often about being able to bend, to adapt, and to go with the flow instead of trying to resist or control everything. And the sources suggest that we can develop that bamboo-like flexibility in our own lives by practicing mindfulness, being kind to ourselves, strengthening our support systems, and nurturing our connection to something bigger than ourselves, whether it's through faith, nature, art, or helping others. So it's about building that inner resilience, that foundation of strength and flexibility so we can handle whatever challenges come our way. Exactly. And the sources remind us that this process of building resilience, hope, and faith is ongoing. It's a lifelong adventure of learning, growing, and changing. There will be ups and downs, times when we feel strong and times when we feel vulnerable. But by embracing all of who we are, by learning from our challenges, and by continuing to look for the light, we can develop those qualities that allow us to not just survive, but to truly thrive. This has been such a great deep dive. We've explored so many different aspects of resilience, hope, and faith, from practical strategies to deeper ideas. And I think one of the main takeaways is that these qualities aren't just nice to have. They're essential tools for dealing with the challenges that are a part of everyone's life. And what I find really inspiring is that both sources say these qualities aren't fixed, you know? Yeah, they can change and grow, which means we can keep getting better at them throughout our lives. Definitely. It's like working out a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. And the cool thing is, there are so many ways to build resilience, hope, and faith. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. Right. So it's about finding what works for you, what fits your own needs and experiences. Exactly. One person might find peace in nature, while another person finds strength in helping others. There's no right or wrong way to tap into these qualities. And I think that's what makes this so empowering. It's knowing that we all have the potential for resilience, hope, and faith. And we can find ways to grow those things in a way that feels true to ourselves. And I think it's important to say that these qualities aren't about pretending everything's okay or putting on a happy face. It's about acknowledging our struggles, embracing all of our experiences, and still choosing to believe in a better future. So it's not about ignoring the bad stuff, but about finding those sparks of light, those sources of strength and hope that help us through the tough times. And the amazing thing is that sometimes those sparks of light come from the most unexpected places. It could be a kind word from a stranger, a beautiful sunset, a song that moves you, or just a small act of kindness that reminds you there's still good in the world. It's about being open to those moments, recognizing that even when things are hard, there's still beauty, joy, and connection to be found. Yeah. And those moments, even if they're short, can fuel our resilience, renew our hope, and remind us that we're not alone. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to go back to something we talked about before. The idea that resilience, hope, and faith aren't just personal qualities, but things that can be strengthened through our relationships with other people. Definitely. The sources really highlight the importance of community, whether it's family, friends, neighbors, co-workers, or even just a shared sense of purpose. Those connections can give us the support, encouragement, and inspiration we need to keep going when things get tough. It's true what they say. It takes a village. We're not meant to do life alone. We need each other, especially when we're facing challenges. And it's interesting that both sources say that giving support can be just as helpful as receiving it. When we reach out to others, offer help, or just listen, we're not only making ourselves more resilient, but we're also spreading that positivity to others. So it's a win-win. We help others, and in doing so, we also help ourselves. And those acts of kindness, those connections we make, can become powerful sources of hope. When we see how we can impact others, when we experience the beauty of human connection, it can renew our faith in ourselves, in humanity, and in the possibility of a better world. So it's about realizing that we're all in this together, and that even small acts of kindness and compassion can make a difference. They can. And the sources give some really practical tips for how we can build these connections and create a sense of community in our lives. One is to simply make an effort to connect with people on a deeper level. Instead of just making small talk, take the time to really listen to people, to learn about their experiences, to share your own stories, and to build those genuine connections. So it's about being more mindful in our interactions, about making space for real connection. Exactly. Another suggestion is to get involved in something bigger than yourself, whether it's volunteering, joining a group, or just being a good neighbor. When we contribute to something beyond ourselves, we not only make a difference in the world, but we also create a sense of belonging and purpose, which would be really powerful. So it's about finding things that excite us, that connect us to something meaningful, and that allow us to use our unique talents to make a positive impact. Right. And the sources also emphasize how important it is to celebrate our collective resilience. It's easy to get caught up in all the negative things happening in the world to focus on the problems and challenges, but it's just as important to recognize and celebrate the incredible strength of the human spirit. All the acts of courage, compassion, and creativity that are happening all around us. So it's about choosing to see the good. To recognize that even in the darkest times, there's still so much beauty, kindness, and love in the world. And those stories, those examples of human resilience can inspire us, lift us up, and remind us that we're capable of much more than we often think. This deep dive has been such an amazing exploration of resilience, hope, and faith. We've covered so much from practical tips to really profound ideas. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought-provoking question to think about. What's one small thing you can do today to bring a little more resilience, hope, or faith into your life? It could be anything, like calling a friend, practicing gratitude, or just taking a few deep breaths and appreciating the beauty of this moment. Remember, even the smallest actions can make a difference, not just for you, but for the world around you. Until next time, fellow deep divers, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep believing in the power of resilience, hope, and faith.